In other news, thousands of people in Israel are taking to the streets once again today to protest a controversial plan to overhaul the country's judicial system. A national day of disruption has been planned for today. The highway between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem was blocked during rush hour traffic earlier, and protesters even prevented trains from departing by blocking their doors. Now, if the legislation does go through, lawmakers in the Knesset will be able to override Supreme Court decisions with a simple majority. For more on this story, we can go across to Sami Sockol standing by in Jerusalem. Sami, good afternoon to you. Lots of pressure on the government to backtrack, but will it?
Well, it seems that this government is not going to back up on its plans. Today there has been more legislation, and there's yet more legislation this afternoon to come. Maybe the most dramatic legislation that has passed. Again, we're talking about only the first reading. This still has to come to second and third reading in Parliament, but it's the rule that will say that the majority of 61 out of the 120 members of Parliament can override the Supreme Court if it decides that any legislation is unconstitutional. And therefore, the opposition is escalating, and we've seen this day of rage that they have announced, the day of disruption. And what we've seen now in Tel Aviv is that the police decided to disperse the demonstrators, and they've used for the first time stun grenades. And this is something that we have not seen here before. The minister in charge of the police, Itamar Ben-Gvir, who comes from this far right-wing party, he said that he's not going to let the protesters disrupt the traffic. So we're seeing now a major confrontation in Tel Aviv. And later this afternoon, there's going to be a big protest in Jerusalem.
While you were speaking, we were showing images of the protests in Tel Aviv, and we see security forces on horseback there. Now, these protests, Sami, come as tensions between Israelis and Palestinians are heightened. This past Sunday night, Israeli settlers went on a rampage in the West Bank. Some in Israel have described those actions as a pogrom. What is the latest on the investigation?
Yeah, well, the same minister who's in charge of the police here and is referred to as the Minister of Public Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, he's the person who has refused to condemn the attacks against the Palestinians in the town of Hawara. We've heard politicians call it a pogrom. Even the military itself admits that it did not act the way it should. It deployed forces in the village, but these forces did not prevent hundreds of settlers from setting houses on fire and cars on fire. And we've so far only heard of 6 arrested by the police. And this is a big source of contention. The same minister calls those in Tel Aviv the ones who go on pogrom. That's how he actually describes the demonstrators in Tel Aviv. And those who are burning in the West Bank, the settlers who burn in the West Bank, he doesn't want to call them by names.
Sami, thank you.